last Saturday night, or yesterday, I should say, at Hollywood, California. Dang, I almost said Hollywood, California. They got me brainwashed since I'm here from the Los Angeles area. Let me try that again. In Hollywood, Florida, on HBO, Andre Berto takes a 12-round unanimous decision from the Colombian Juan Urango. Berto wins, but did very little to create excitement within his career. What do you think, John? Berto, he won the fight doing what he does, fighting in spurts and holding, but really, once again, not for the most part, not an exciting fighter.
You know what? I don't really see that big of a difference between this recent performance and performances in the past. So I don't know why all of a sudden everybody's going on this thing that he holds a lot. He's always held a lot. That's been, part of his game plan is to use his speed, power, and reflexes on the outside, hop in, rattle off some combinations, then go ahead and clinch it up. I guess to alleviate any necessary defense he might have to implement. I think it's a style that's kind of taken over boxing over the past couple of years, especially with some of these young prospects. For a guy like Bernard Hopkins, I think he has a pass being that he's getting up there in age. But for these young guys, I mean, I don't know what's up, if it's either with the coaching, the trainers, or whatever, but these guys just don't fight on the inside, and it's just becoming a lost art.
I don't know. I agree with you. I don't see why there's this huge outrage now because Andre Berto has always fought like this. He's a guy that throws punches. He seems a little tight, rallies off a few combinations, and then holds. Maybe it's because earlier in the year when he fought Luis Colasso, the referee, Keith Hughes, docked him a point for holding, and he had to fight. And then he was in a competitive, exciting fight because he had to throw punches and couldn't save himself by holding, and he was in a good fight. But this is the way the dude fights. And my argument has been, if his promoter is not Lou DiBella, his whole career, or the majority of his career now, the last few years, wouldn't be on HBO, and we wouldn't be seeing this guy because he's not an exciting fighter. Does he have good hand speed? Yes. I mean, does he have some good tools? Yes. But the bottom line is, when you throw in holding or clinching as one of your main strategic tools, you're going to be a boring fighter.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I almost want to jump into my final thought, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I just don't understand why there's a double standard when it comes to the holding. Maybe it is because of people in their advanced age, but I honestly look at Berto like a clone of a Shane Mosley these days. I think Shane Mosley does 2 or 3 times as much holding as Berto does in there. And Berto's the one chastised for this whole thing. But in any case, man, I think you're completely right. With the Heyman and the DiBella connection to HBO, I mean, it's one of the only reasons why Berto's headlining these HBO cards. I just hope that in the future they take our friend Keith Hughes and make him the referee in his bouts. Because I think if they had Keith Hughes in this fight this past Saturday night, it would have been somewhat different. That's just my opinion.
I'm not sure if the outcome might have been different. I still think Urango loses that fight, but at least it would be more of a firefight. It would be more exciting, and it would have fit in nicely to HBO's game plan this year when it comes to televising fights. They've had pretty good fights on their HBO Championship Boxing and Boxing After Dark, but now when they gave Chad Dawson that fight again with Tarver, and when they gave Berto this fight here with Urango, they kind of lost a little bit of that steam. I mean, I don't have a problem having Andre Berto on there. He just needs to do something to deserve it. He needs to be exciting. It's not even like he's a skilled boxer or a counterpart puncher showing beautiful boxing skills and defense. The guy just holds, and that's the bottom line. My favorite Twitter comment this week, John, from our Twitter account, which is twitter.com/boxing truth, comes from NHB News, and he says HBO would buy Al Heyman's fighter versus Hannah Montana. And I'm starting to wonder if that's true. If HBO would just pretty much buy anything that Al Heyman presents to them at this point in time.
It's tough to say, man. I think maybe in the past we might think that, but being that Berto now holds I guess is it the WBC strap for the welterweight division, I don't think he's going to get that many much more soft touches. At least, from my perspective, it'd be a complete shock and outrage if they went ahead and put him up against a real soft touch later on in the year. I think they need to continue progressing him, stepping up the level of competition. What was I thinking about? I guess one of his comments at the post fight with Max Kellerman. I'm not really sure if he said this I guess, off camera or kind of like not when he was being interviewed, but he mentioned going down to 140. Did you hear something like that, Rick?
I didn't catch that, to be honest. I don't really pay a lot of attention to the announcers on HBO. Unfortunately, I'm just more concerned in watching the fight. And, if Larry Merchant ain't there, I'm just kind of tuning out, brother. So I didn't catch that. I know that in some of the articles that were written by different newspapers and internet boxing writers, they're saying that DeBella and Team Berto is ready for the next step. And I'm looking at the welterweight division. The most likely fight that Berto could possibly work himself into is a fight possibly with Miguel Cotto or Shane Mosley. How competitive is Andre Berto against a Shane Mosley or a Miguel Cotto at this point in his career and looking at his skill set?
It depends, man. It's not even from a skill set perspective. It's like those fights come down to the referee, especially with Cotto. We saw the fight that Shane Mosley gave to Miguel Cotto, and that was based on tons of holding. That was one of the only reasons why it was as competitive as it was. As for a fight with Shane Mosley and Andre Berto, I liken a fight like that to a heavyweight atrocity we saw some years back between Fred Kendo and John Ruiz, just two guys that come to punch and clinch all night. So now it's really difficult to say. I would probably favor Berto over Mosley at this point. I think he's faster, he's more explosive, and he clinches just as much. So it's like it's not even, I guess, judging these types of hypothetical matchups from a boxing match. It's just I guess it depends how much the ref's going to let them bend and break the rules.
Definitely so. That being said, for Juan Urango, he moves back down to junior welterweight. He gets a nice payday for being on an HBO. He still has his IBF super lightweight strap. And his number one contender is Randall Bailey. A fight between Juan Urango and Randall Bailey is probably a decent fight on ESPN and produces much more excitement than what we saw yesterday on HBO.
No, I completely agree with you, man. I mean, Randall Bailey's comes from the old school type of fighting, is where you either box, punch, move. Clinching is the last resort. Knowing that you got to put fans in the stands to go ahead and pay your bills. We all know that with the HBO, I guess the television money, that's where most of the income's coming from. But like you said, I think Bailey Urango is a great fight. I think that's the ESPN main event. It's just weird how we have such a huge discrepancy in between, I guess, getting an HBO date and making $500,000 to getting on ESPN and making, I think, less than 50,000. So that's just the way it goes.